I'm a winner.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How you doing? I'm doing well. Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Alyssa Calderhead. I am PTAC co-chair, and it is 4:01 on Wednesday, the 11th. And I am calling today's meeting of the Public Transit Advisory Committee to order now. So with that, we will begin with introductions of all committee members. If you would please say your name and which city, town, or board appointed you. We will start with members in the room, starting on the right side and go around. So if you would, yep.
Want to start here? Okay. Got it. Nick Gallo, Town of Pineville.
Rob Hillman, City of Charlotte.
John Cobb, Town of Davidson. Barry Green Jr., Mecklenburg County Commissioner.
Kevin Walsh, Town of Huntersville. Abdulia Alden, Mecklenburg County.
Alyssa Calderhead, City of Charlotte.
Brent Cagle, interim CEO, CATS.
Elizabeth Pursuti, Chief Administrative Officer for CATS.
Veteran Bird, Town of Matthews.
Jonathan Wells, Board of Education.
Juan Contreras Juarez, MTC.
Jeff Parker, Town of Mint Hill.
Ed McKinney, City Manager's Office.
I'm Natalie Bouchard with CATS. I'm just running the PowerPoint.
Okay, any members joining us virtually? All right, and any CAT staff in the room that hasn't introduced themselves? Okay, thank you all. We have quorum. And we will open it up for topics for committee member forum. So this is really a place where we can take account, share service issues or concerns, raise topics. And we have previously run out of time during the last two meetings. We really want to make sure that these issues, anything related to customer service, experience, you name it, we can, address those. And CAT staff will ensure that there is time allotted for this forum at the end of our meeting. So with that being said, if anyone has a topic that we can add to our discussion at the end of this meeting, please speak now. And if you would, please introduce yourself and then the topic.
Robert Hillman, City of Charlotte. Wanted to engage in a discussion about any anti-displacement measures that are going to be embedded or in place as we roll out the transit plan.
Hi, Veteran Bird, Town of Matthews. I just want to have a moment to speak on the repair at the Park and Ride at Independence Boulevard. I can't remember. Matthews Township.
Okay. Alyssa Calderhead, co-chair speaking. Those two issues have been heard. Are there any additional topics? Anyone online? Okay, with that, we will move on to the next segment. here we will look at our May 14th meeting summary. I hope everyone had an opportunity to review the May 14th meeting summary. And I would like to see if there's a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to jump back. Minor correction, Veteran Byrd, Town of Matthews. I'm going to get used to doing that every time. Just a minor correction regarding the attendees. Alyssa Calderhead is not Charlotte Mayor. Last I checked.
Okay, we will make that correction.
I didn't get who made the motion or the second.
Okay. Our first motion was made by Jonathan Wells,
Yeah, second by me.
and we had a second by co-chair Abdulia Odin, but we had a correction come in by Ms. Veteran Byrd for the attendees to be, I guess, edited.
Got Mayor.
Yeah.
Got it.
We can clarify that in future minutes, but it was not to imply that Ms. Calderhead, you were
Yeah.
the mayor. It was to inform that you were appointed by the mayor.
Understood.
Nor is Mr. Odin the chair of the
Yeah.
Mecklenburg
That's a
County
hard one.
Board of Commissioners.
So with that being understood, can we go back and make a motion to approve?
I move we accept the minutes with the minor correction.
Second, Jonathan Wells.
So we had a motion to correct the minutes. The motion was made by Veteran Byrd, and it was seconded by Jonathan Wells. Okay, we will move on to our public comment segment.
Oh,
All in favor, please raise your hands for, okay, for minutes. Okay,
All opposed.
opposed.
any opposed, any nays? Okay. Now we will move on to public comment. Today we have Devontae Kingston. And when you have 3 minutes, when you hear the timer, please conclude your comments.
All right.
Thanks.
Hello, I'm Devontae, and I'm an avid cats rider. And I just had a few complaints in regards to transportation wise. So a lot of the bus routes, wherever, when we're waiting from the CTC or either somewhere near our house or wherever, they're being canceled. And when I call and make complaints, it's being said that there are no bus drivers. But then here come a few weeks ago, May, we just had the Quail Hollow, and there were a ton of drivers, supervisors out there. So I'm trying to figure out where do all these people come from and why can't they staff any other regular day?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those comments. And just so I understand, you're an avid rider and the transportation routes are frequently being canceled by your house. You're communicating with CATS and about these routes being canceled or stops rather. And the answer is no bus drivers are available to provide this service.
Correct. And not only by my house, I said as well as the TTC staff.
Okay.
And on the app, it's coming up that literally where the bus is supposed to come, there'll be a strike through. It's multiple strike throughs. because they don't have drivers. But for our daily rides, we had tons of drivers that opt out of nowhere.
Okay, so I think this is something that absolutely needs to be addressed. I don't know if this is something better.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can follow up.
Thank
Yes,
you,
absolutely. We can
Devontae.
follow up. We have contact information here from Mr. Kingston, and so we will follow up with you.
All right. So back to the agenda. Again, my name is Alyssa Calderhead, PTAC co-chair. Next up, we have the MTC updates as there are no more public comment speakers at this time. So included in your packet, beginning on page 7, and for the watching public, this report has been posted with all of our meeting materials on the CATS website. Are there any questions, comments on this report from any of the committee members or staff?
Tanya Jameson. I would just love, Brett, if you could talk a little bit about the decision to change the CTC Center and how that is under CAT's purview, whatever. If you could talk a little bit about that, please.
Sure, and we have a presentation that is on the agenda today, but I will start off by saying the CTC, all of the CTC is owned, operated by CATS, and the lessees there, the food and beverage retailers, the concessionaires, the variety of concessionaires are all under lease to CATS. It has always been anticipated that at some point, as the CTC needs to be renovated, that those leases would need to be terminated. So they all included termination clauses in their leases. That was part of the approved lease when those leases were approved by the city council. In addition to that, as we've started to look at the condition of the CTC and some of the activities that are going on related to non-transit activities, it became clear that it would be advantageous for CATS to be able to better control the transit center as a fare zone. Having the concessionaires in the transit center, and because of the design of the transit center, it's a very old design, it's been there for 30 years, it made it more difficult for our security personnel to ensure that those folks using the transit center are transit riders. And so if you think about the train platforms, those train platforms clearly are marked fare zone. There's literally a red, sometimes a blue line that says fare zone. And if you are inside the fare zone, you need to be a ticketed passenger. The transit center is not marked as such. And we are starting to enforce the transit center as a fare zone. And that will help us to ensure that the folks at the transit center are either working for CATS or riding CATS using the system. Because what we were seeing is there were incidents occurring that were between folks who really, they weren't there to use transit. They were there for other reasons. And so that was the main thing. We did have an opportunity. One of the concessionaires voluntarily told us a couple months ago that they were not going to renew their lease. And it gave us the opportunity then to also move forward with terminating the leases. We will have a presentation later on at this meeting to talk more about that. But that was the driver behind it.
Alyssa Calderhead, PTAC co-chair. Are there any other questions or comments specifically about the report? Okay, Then we will move into our agenda items next. I guess up first, we have the sales tax legislation. We'll begin with Mr. Ed McKinney from the City Manager's Office to provide a presentation on the mobility funding today.
Sure. Yeah. Good. Let me thank you for the opportunity to be here and share with you some updates on where we are with our plan, with the potential for funding and kind of what the next steps look like. Again, just to reintroduce myself, I'm Ed McKinney. I've been in the city manager's office for about a year and a half, focused around this work around the city's transportation plan, how it relates to the larger transit plan across the county, and the potential for funding for all of those plans moving forward. Go to the next slide. So we always start by providing a little bit of broader context, particularly around what the bigger vision, what the bigger purpose is for mobility investment. And so the way we've described it is really mobility is in service of a whole number of goals that both the city of Charlotte and many of the communities in the county have around really quality of life, sort of providing and building a quality of life in our county and our region, supported by the growth that's happening, but investment that makes that work. And so that includes thinking about affordable housing and what that looks like over time, business development, job growth, and sustainability. And really what we say is it's sort of like a three-legged stool, that what we're essentially trying to do is provide increased access and affordable housing opportunities, provide jobs and affordable access to those jobs, really service through mobility. And so everything we do, transit, road investment, is in service of these broader issues we have with quality of life across our community. A couple other points to be made, and again, these are things that I know this community is well aware of and probably very focused on, which is some drilling down to what this means for large parts of our community. Cost of owning a car, right? And this notion that the investment that we make provides choices for many of us in our community. And so making sure that we provide mobility options, transit and roads that serve where we need to be in the community. And again, as this committee probably knows, the potential of transit investment, particularly Better Bus, gives us the ability to serve parts of our community that aren't as well served by transit as they could be. And so as I'll show you in this presentation, to give you a sense of how we begin to layer the transit investment and the road investment together to be a sort of cohesive mobility plan. So talk about the sales tax and just give you a little bit of the details of what that looks like. And I'll make mention, if you've been following, there's draft legislation that was introduced over the last several months. Today was sort of a big day because those two drafts have now been combined into one. It was moved into the Transportation Committee at the state level just this morning. And so the process is moving well. We're optimistic about the opportunity to have some action by the state legislature, which would give us the ability to put this on a referendum later this year.
Tanya Jameson. So you said the two drafts were combined. I know that the Cotham draft went through. So the Sawyer draft went through too, or is it the Cotham draft that has gone?
It's essentially the Cotham draft, and they've combined components of both.
Do you know how they're doing the split then?
I'm sorry.
Whether it's 60-40?
Sure, good question. So, and I'll talk about what I'll show you now is consistent what's in that draft, which is the same split. Maybe I'll get to the split here and walk through that, but it's the same as what I'll share with you in this presentation. So just again, maybe a couple of talking points around the sales tax. 1 cent sales tax countywide. Couple of points we've been making around both the household impact, what it's on and what it's not on, and what it looks like from the impact to both our community and visitors. So point to always be made, and this is reflective of our experience with the current half-cent sales tax, which is from a revenue standpoint, 30% of that sales tax in our community really comes from outside of the community. That's visitors, that's commuters, et cetera. Household impact, doing a little bit of math, again, depending upon the average household income, lower household income, a little bit of math on how spending works, gives you a sense of what that might look like from a household in terms of the increase in the sales tax to your spend as a household. And then all of the things that are not included in our current half cent is essentially what this would include too. So it's an important point to be made about sort of essential needs and goods that are excluded from the sales tax. If you go to the next slide, so here's the split. Back to the question. So the drafts that were introduced and the current one that's moving forward maintains what we call a 40-20-40 split. And so 60% of that is transit. No more than 40% of that can be spent on rail investment. The remaining portion of that would be for bus. And then 40% of the 1 cent goes to what we call roads, so sort of shorthand for all the investment we make. That's sidewalks, that's street lighting, that's pedestrian safety, et cetera. That, just to give you again the scale of that, that's generating over 30 years of $19.4 billion of revenue over the 30-year period. Again, split by the 40-20-40, that's $7.8 billion on roads. Again, 30-year number, 3.8 on the bus, and another 7.8 on the rail system. Again, I think you're very familiar with what the current transit plan that was just recently adopted by MTC, again, completely consistent with this split of the revenue. A little bit way more detail, but this is the first slide was just sort of a very simple view of it. This sort of puts a little bit more context. Road, bus, rail, the point that's made on this slide that's in addition to this is that the idea, and I'm sure you've talked about it before relative to the MTC plan, transit plan, is the ability of this local source to leverage federal dollars, particularly for the investment in the rail system. So we always use this to sort of make a point that this local source, this local revenue gives us the ability to importantly leverage dollars at the federal level and be competitive across the country with other cities that are doing the same. So having that local source is really important. That gives you a transit plan investment that goes beyond the 19.4, right? It's taking that leverage of the federal dollars and combining it with essentially the 60% of the sales tax for transit. Talk about, if you go to the next slide, just I'll drill in a little bit roads. And what I'll do is I'll show you some things around the transit plan that you're very familiar with, but I want to do it just to give you a sense of how all these things combine. So I'll start with roads. Again, the point here to be made is 40%. This would be distributed to the city and the other towns, the 6 towns in the county. Sort of a complicated piece of math that sort of essentially distributes those dollars proportionally based on the scale and size of each of the towns in the city. That gives you the sense of the numbers. And so 7.8 billion over 30 years. Those numbers for each of the towns gives you the year one revenue. It just gives you a sense of the scale of investment. Those dollars, those yearly dollars would grow over time with the growth of the sales tax. Allocated to the city and the towns, pretty significant additional revenue for all of us. It represents 10 to 15% of our budget. That's a pretty significant amount of revenue to really be a transformative way to invest, particularly in transportation for both the towns and the city. The point to be made here too is those dollars are completely under the control of each of those jurisdictions. So the towns, the city, the elected bodies of each of those will be the ones that make decisions about how to prioritize, where to invest, the types of projects, et cetera. So it's completely under the control of the different municipalities, whereas the transit investment, again, as you all would know, would become under the authority of a transit authority in terms of the investment of the transit plan. A little bit about what the city of Charlotte, I'll just focus in on the city of Charlotte's plan around our dollars. Again, the revenue, 102 million at year one. Over 30 years, that's 5.7 billion for the city of Charlotte. We've been working with the city council over the last several years to sort of develop a plan for what we would do with that road investment, sort of our what we would call our transportation plan over a 30-year horizon. What we've done, and you've got copies we've distributed to you. This purple book shows sort of our 30-year plan for what we would do with these road dollars. It's sort of organized and prioritized around this idea of these strategic investment areas. And so we did a lot of analysis to look at where we have congestion, where do we have safety issues, where are there gaps in infrastructure, to sort of do a heat map of where all those things combine to help us focus where we would have the most impact on the investment. So even with 5.7 billion over 30 years, the needs and infrastructure potential that we have is still beyond that investment opportunity. And so it was important for us to kind of have a strategy about how to prioritize. So this book does that. You can kind of walk through sort of council district by council district. It gets pretty granular in terms of each of these areas. What are the types of projects? Gives you a sense of the different modes, the different kind of scale of investment, and the priorities that are in each of those areas. The point to be made here too for us is that those are context specific. We try to be very, with the scale of the city, over 300 square miles, the differences between a Far East area or a Steel Creek area or, West Side, East Side, University City versus, South Park. Those are all different places with pretty different needs. And so this strategy was designed to give us a way to be context specific to those needs across our city.
Mr. McKinney, yeah, I would just say that this is Alyssa Calderhead, PTAC co-chair. This SIA Strategic Investment Area Plan is very comprehensive, and I would actually commend like the hyper local specific strategies involved at each of these various intersections. So I would highly recommend to the committee, if you haven't gotten into this, please do, as there are a lot of very interesting and specific strategies again, and it's not simply a copy paste for each of these different areas.
One thing I will add, just because of the nature of this group, this is a City of Charlotte plan. So if you are from a different jurisdiction than the City of Charlotte, your jurisdiction would, I assume, have a comparable plan, but Charlotte does not set the plan for Pineville or Matthews or Mint Hill. That money goes to each jurisdiction and they set their priorities according to their community needs. So this is the Charlotte plan, and I agree it is comprehensive.
How does 77 fall into this?
Please
Is that
introduce
somewhere else?
yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. Nick Gallo from the town of Pineville. How does Route 77 fall into this plan, or it doesn't?
It's a good question. So there's still the state, or I would say the CRTPO kind of regional plan, right? The projects that are in our region essentially funded through the state transportation plan, and the I-77 project, that potential project is an example of that. The way it falls into this plan, there's a lot of pieces in this plan that touch on projects that are state projects, like how would we align with those projects? An example in a lot of projects with the state is we typically partner where there are state projects and there are things in those projects that we want to, in this case, the City of Charlotte, want to add to those projects. And so there's an opportunity for us to provide funding, to have those integrated with the state projects and to sort of both achieve the state's goals and our goals. There's the potential to do that on the 77 project. So there might be new connections, there might be supportive infrastructure that would come along as an opportunity for a big project like that. Having this funding and embedded in this plan are projects that could be associated with that. Again, essentially in addition to the actual state project. These would be things that we would do, would make sense and be kind of coordinated with that project, but supportive of what the city's goals are is defined in this plan.
The reason I asked the question is because whether it's normal traffic and traffic patterns, right? But I can tell you from exit 23 to exit 30 on 77, it's a nightmare trying to get through there at many hours during the day. And then if you want to use that HOV lane, right, to go, right, the toll lane, it literally costs you almost $25 to go about 7 miles. All right, the way I have that set up. What's that? Unless you're on a bus. Okay. All right, I'll concede that. Or I got 3 people in my car. Okay. So that's the only reason I bring it up, because I'm hearing a lot of complaints about that area stretch of people trying to get north of the city.
Yeah, and again, maybe the point to be made here is there are big state projects that are funded completely separate from this, right? This is a local source for local projects. And the decisions around those big projects happen with our MPO, CRTPO, again, a board that's representative across the region. And those are challenging decisions that they will be facing as we move forward.
Is that another forum that we bring up those concerns outside of here?
Outside of the committee, there is a committee member forum at the end of this.
No, I'm asking if there's somewhere else outside.
The CRTPO
Right.
it would be the organization. We can get you information on the cadence of their meetings, when they meet, and who your representatives are, who the representatives are, to the NPO, which is called the CRTPO. And that is a separate body.
Right, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, so we can provide that information to you.
Thank you, appreciate that.
If you go to the next slide, just to drill to the point, I appreciate the comments around the nature of the plan that we put together. I'll say this is, the culmination of lots of work over many years, lots of staff across the city to sort of assess all of our needs and bring those into a plan. They're really, again, the point to be made here is roads is really a shorthand for all the ways we invest in our streets, right? And so that's across all modes. There's lots of things in here that are completely supportive of transit. Many of the things that you'll see in this plan are focused in those strategic areas. One of the factors of those were where the high priority, high frequency bus corridors were going to be. And so we were anticipating that potential and the kind of infrastructure we might do on a corridor, Beatty's Ford being a great example of one of the high frequency bus routes. All the infrastructure vision for that would be to do everything we can to make that the most safe, pedestrian friendly corridor, to be obviously supportive of both the neighbors and the community, but supportive of transit overall. Back to just want to make reference to another thing we've handed out, sort of drills to this point, is this is a piece of work that we did on the Harrisburg Road corridor, kind of in the Far East. What the City Council gave us this past year through the bonds was a $55 million bond to test these strategic investment areas, and Harrisburg Road was one of those. This just gives you an example of how detailed we can be in terms of the types of projects, how we would invest, sort of a strategic plan across a corridor. Again, this is another example. This has I think it's the 46X. It's a express route that starts at 485 and goes through the Harrisburg Road corridor. And so again, we're already coordinating with the team at CATS to do investment in the bus stops that are there and putting sidewalks on this corridor to make it transit friendly and essentially be basic infrastructure to the walkability of a corridor that already has a bus route on it to support, again, long-term goals around transit and multimodal investment. The next few I'll go through quick because I assume and I know you all are very familiar with the plan that was adopted. I just do this to put it in context, right? So we've always been talking, when we were out there talking to the community and to sort of stakeholder groups, we try to emphasize a few things that are really important about the transit system plan that just was adopted. Again, I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but better bus. We always start with bus because it's so foundational. And again, this, how it touches so much of our community. The high frequency corridors, those 15 corridors, all the bus stop improvements, again, lots of that coordinated with this plan, and absolutely, obviously, the microtransit. And again, I'll show you at the end of this kind of how we see all those things coming together. Next slide. This gives you a map. We've been testing a way to visually describe some of that better bus and the frequency and the microtransit across the community. And so what you see here is the darker orange are those 15 high frequency corridors, a 15-minute service. That buffer is a half mile, so that sort of represents, being able to do a 10-minute walk to one of those routes. The lighter color is all the microtransit zones, right? The 19 zones across the city. And so we use this as a way to just emphasize, particularly to groups that probably don't fully appreciate the value and the reach of the bus system, and show what this better bus plan and this vision that could be achieved by this new funding and how much of the community it would touch, right? And so CATS has been, doing the analysis and providing some of these data points to just describe, the dramatic, ability to connect to people, to connect to jobs, and to give us sort of a new way and, great new opportunities like microtransit to touch parts of the community that, again, don't have transit access today. Won't belabor this. Everyone's very familiar with the transit plan, the rail investment program. Again, we just do this to give, again, the context of how these things layer. If you go to the next slide, I'll just give you this one example that sort of touches on what I think is a unique part of Charlotte that hits all these things in an interesting way. So this is sort of a zoom in, lots on these maps, but this is a zoom in of sort of the southwest part of Charlotte. So at the bottom, you see Rivergate, that sort of Steel Creek area, all the way up to the west side. You see the airport sort of midway through that map. And so on the left side, you see what's in this purple book. So those are all the strategic areas. All those little circles represent a focused set of projects within each of those areas. Again, think of sidewalks, think of pedestrian crossings. In some cases, certainly in Steel Creek, there's congestion. And so there's intersection capacity kinds of projects that are in there as well. And then you look on the other side about what I just showed on that broader map, right? So you see the high frequency bus corridors, that half-mile buffer. You see the lighter zone of those microtransit. You see the rail, certainly the Silver Line extension to the airport, the Blue Line extension to Pineville. But it's an interesting place to be. We just did a town hall in Steel Creek a couple weeks ago and started to describe and help them understand the opportunity of this plan, right? That's both road investment coupled with the bus investment, coupled with microtransit. Certainly rail is part of that, but to paint the picture of how all these things come together. And I think there's a lot to share. It's sometimes hard to kind of communicate that, but we're very hopeful and have found getting some good feedback on understanding, particularly around things that people haven't experienced before, like microtransit, and how it relates to this investment. So we're starting to get some traction in particularly parts of the community that don't currently have transit, aren't going to get rail, and sort of are questioning, well, what's in it for us? What does this mean for us? And what we've been trying to describe is there's things about this transit plan you may not be aware of. We want to share that with you, and we want to show you how that relates to kind of how the city, in particular, this is again Charlotte example, how the city would invest in roads to be kind of mutually supportive of that investment. Next slide, I think, is just the end. I just wanted to give you a sense of how all those things relate, kind of the notion of how the city would plan and coordinate with the transit investment long term, and what we think is just a really interesting, great opportunity for us to think about investment like we've never have before. You all will know this, but if you think about where we were in '98 in the half cent and what Charlotte looked like then and what it looks like now with the investment we made, it's a good time to pause and recognize that what the city looks like today and what it will look like 30 years is just dramatic. And the potential for this really unprecedented opportunity for funding across all modes is just something that Charlotte has never seen before. So it's a really interesting time. I think we're excited, and hopefully there's some good momentum that's being built that will get us to the opportunity to put this in front of the voters later this year. So I'll stop there and glad to take more discussion.
Yeah, fantastic presentation. And now we'll open it up for questions here. So Mr. Robert Hillman.
Robert Hillman, City of Charlotte. Thank you very much for the presentation. It is illuminating. I do have a couple of questions, and I'll start off with and let it kind of circulate around. On your slide here, it has affordable, housing, affordable, and anti-displacement, and I guess a focus on ownership. And I guess how is that baked in or solidified in the plan? All right, because again, love the idea of a better city, love the idea of a place that's got transit options, but want to understand how that impacts the people who are native to place. And if the issue is, they vote for something, it's a better city, but they've got to move to, and not, leverage or benefit from it. It seems, I don't think anybody wants that to happen. So the question is, what are we doing to make sure that that doesn't happen?
Yeah, good question, and I'll speak only from a city of Charlotte perspective. And I'll say that it has always been a goal, right? There's a priority the council has had for years around housing, affordable housing, anti-displacement, et cetera. We feel and have been working to make sure that this plan, this investment is tied to those things together. We want to be clear, though, that the sales tax, the funding itself is around the mobility investment. The city of Charlotte is committed to, and just even this past year has committed to in a way they've never done before in terms of their housing trust or their housing, affordable housing bonds increased to 100 million this past year. That was double what we have done before. That includes, and there would be a whole separate conversation with our housing team about all the programs that are in that, including making sure that we're building wealth opportunities with down payment assistance, anti-displacement in terms of emergency repair in neighborhoods, all the way to housing, affordable housing investment. And so the way we see it is the city has their vision, our vision and plan. We have investment already being made. The opportunity with this transportation mobility investment is to continue to build that opportunity to connect them and use the new, essentially the capacity that's built in our investment with transportation to continue and sustain the capacity and investment that we made in housing over the long term. It's a city of Charlotte priority, right? And it's something the council has been committed to and will continue to be committed to as we move forward.
One other thing on that is specific to transit. Yeah. So Brent Cagle, interim CEO. One other thing. So Mr. McKinney's right. The city and its other programs, mobility sort of ties those together, right? And it makes all of those other programs more effective. Beyond that, specific to transit, I will also say we hear a lot about rail and transit-oriented development, or TOD. There's also been an evolution of TOD, right? When the Blue Line was built, this concept of TOD started to emerge, and not just in Charlotte, but in other communities as well. And over 20 years, that vision or the priorities of TOD have changed too. And so now we talk more about what we call ETOD, or equitable TOD. CATS, along with other city departments, has already launched a community-based group. We have a grant to study equitable TOD along the Silver Line, and we have community members and other stakeholders involved in that as we go through that process. And so what I would say is, the sales tax is about mobility and about buses and roads and those things, but how CATS goes about building and what we think about along rail lines has also evolved and changed from just that basic TOD into that equitable TOD that does think about things like business opportunities, impacts on small businesses, impacts along the line for displacement and affordable housing and all of those things. And those are the kind of things that we look at today as we're planning for these projects specific to rail.
Kind of a related question, because have we done, and maybe that's what you're saying, because we built out the south end, right? And it's, we brought a lot of, development and housing into that area. Do we know how that impacted, again, the people who were in place, and do we know what economic opportunities were provided to small businesses? And
yeah, so we do have all of that information, or we have most of that information, some of that information, in that it was when the Blue Line was built, these things weren't tracked the same way. So can we answer all of those questions specific to the original Blue Line? Probably not. But as we have done the Blue Line extension and the Gold Line, we do track those things. I'll also say opportunities for anti-displacement, opportunities for affordable housing along the Blue Line are not gone. The city's housing and neighborhood services department is doing that today. Just this year, the city has offered affordable housing opportunities along the Blue Line, not in South End necessarily, but the Blue Line is more than just South End or NODA. And so we can happy to share some of that information, both on the Blue Line extension, the disadvantaged business enterprises or the DBEs that were utilized on the project. Happy to share information that we have on TOD around the Blue Line, primarily the Blue Line extension. And what I'd say is all of those experience inform us for how we can do more moving forward and build strategies into the future for future projects.
Jonathan Wells.
Yeah, Jonathan Wells, CMS. Two questions, Ed, and I'll ask them both at the same time. The first one is on the sub-allocation for the roads that you showed on one of the slides among the 7 jurisdictions. How did you calculate, I don't see anything for unincorporated areas, and how is that calculated? And then the second question is, for those of us who like tracking the status of bills at the state level with regard to the authorization, do you happen to have a bill number that is attached to this?
I should have it memorized, but I don't.
Thanks, appreciate it.
So your first question on the unincorporated areas, simple way, no, all the allocation is specific to the jurisdictions, the boundaries. I will say though, for the city of Charlotte and the ETJ within the city of Charlotte's purview, there has been a commitment between the city manager and the county manager to use some of these funds to help address the orphan road issue. Don't know how many might be familiar with that. It's a whole topic in and of itself, but there's needs in the unincorporated areas, particularly around the maintenance of a number of existing roads that are out there now. And so, again, this part of this funding would just in the city of Charlotte's ETJ be used for that.
Yeah, thank you.
It's House Bill 948.
House Bill 948. And Ms. Betrenberg.
Yes, just a very quick question. How do you hedge a 30-year plan against inflation?
Brent Cagle, interim CEO. So for the transit system plan, we work with a financial modeling firm called InfraStrategies, and they make assumptions on inflation. They also make assumptions on cost of debt, right? What will the interest rates be? They make assumptions on costs of operations and maintenance and cost of capital, i.e. the cost of construction, as well as they make assumptions about revenue growth. And so all of those are in there. What I would say on these models is they are by nature, and they should be. I know our CFO is sitting right over there, and as a former CFO myself, all of these models are very conservative, and they need to be, because whatever the assumption is today about the interest rate in 30 years, if we knew that, I wouldn't be here. I'd be somewhere else because I'd have a crystal ball and could tell the future. So that model is not static. As time goes by, right, it continues to update, and assumptions about interest rate today, they may be reduced in the future, right? Because right now we're in a high interest rate environment, but we use those models. They do make assumptions out 30 years. They are by their nature conservative. The key to it is making sure that you make those adjustments on a routine basis, at least once a year, probably more like 2 to 3 times a year as we go into the program.
Okay, for the interest of time here, I do want us to talk about the CTC, the Charlotte Transportation Center, as well as get to our committee member forum. So with that, we will open it up to Brent and the CATS team and talk about the Charlotte Transportation Center update.
Yes, Brent Cagle, interim CEO. I will, in the interest of time, I will move us straight over and introduce Ms. Kelly Goforth, our Deputy Director over Development, as well as Mr. Osnes Eric, our Deputy Director over Safety and Security. Kelly will start the presentation and Eric will chime in. Eric, you're welcome to chime in from the podium.
Yep. All right. Thank you, Kelly Goforth, Chief Development Officer. Thanks for the opportunity to provide an update on the CTC. I know we have a lot of interest and some questions related to the status of some recent activity. And so we're going to cover these topics today in a brief presentation so that we have plenty of time for discussion and questions. The status of the CTC redevelopment, safety and security, retail tenants, condition assessment, and next steps. So as many of you are aware, we had previously had a project that we were working with a private developer on a joint development project to redevelop the CTC with a potential underground transit center. And we had received a $15 million raise grant to advance that project. Over the past couple of years, that project hasn't been able to move forward. There were some challenges with, market conditions related to the private development as well as increased estimated costs for that project. So at this point, we are not moving forward with that CTC redevelopment project. So we have now focused on improvements to the existing transit center. And so we're going to talk about some of that work today. So the next topic is safety and security, and I'll turn it over to Eric for that.
So I'll introduce the topic. My name's Eric Osnes. I'm new to Brent's executive team. I'm the new Chief Safety and Security Officer. So the Charlotte Transit Center underwent a comprehensive vulnerability assessment where we looked at the assets within the CTC. We identified vulnerabilities related to those assets, the expansion of the fare zone being a mitigation in relation to one of the vulnerabilities that we had identified. I want to present the mitigations that we've identified based on a framework of engineering, education, and enforcement. So I'm going to hand over the mic to Ebony, who's our chief security person. But in short, I wanted to underscore that we believe that in the aggregate, once these mitigations are in place, that ultimately this will improve upon the customer experience. So Ebony, I'll hand it over to you, my friend.
Thank you. Ebony Nesbitt, Cat Security. We'll start off with the education piece. So we intend to provide education to our passengers on how to report suspicious activities on our properties via, the O additive, see something, say something. We have programs such as 911 that everybody knows about. We also have a CATS Pass app. Inside of that app, we have a eLerts program embedded into that app. And what eLerts allows our riders to do is to notify Transit Police Dispatch immediately of any incidents or security related incidents that are taking place on the property, where we can dispatch our contracted police to those incidents in real time. We also have the customer service that you can call in as well. I'm partial to the eLerts because we get a response in real time instead of having the customer service where we might get a response to that same incident or issue. It's just a day later, and we're playing catch up at that point. We want to display clear signage such as the fare zone lined around the transit center, no smoking signs and stuff like that. It's things that's inside of the transit center that we that would make it a better place for our riders and our employees. A lot of people, smoke in the transit center. I know it's outside, but it's have that roof on the top so the smoke don't dissipate like it's supposed to. It gets caught in there. City properties are no smoking properties, as you all know. That's including the transit center as well. So that clear signage. We want to ensure that our passengers know that we also have emergency call boxes that are around the transit center. Some of them are not clearly marked, and we are going around and making sure those are marked. We test those to make sure that they go straight to 911. And there's a cut off that goes to our transit police dispatch. So when you push that button, you can get both 911 and our transit police dispatch. So you get a quick response from both agencies. We got that out because a lot of people may not have a cell phone to call 911 or use the app. So we have a way for them to get in touch with us and report those incidents. We want to help our customers know how to use the TVM machines that we intend to put out around the transit center that will aid in that us enforcing the fare zone line. Because if some people may not have a ticket at that time, the TVM is outside where they could go purchase a ticket and then come inside, step across the fare zone line and utilize the system. Without that, we wouldn't be able to enforce a fare zone. We want to communicate to the public on any related incidents and promote awareness to the public transit customers. That's just to keep everybody abreast of what's happening down at the transit center. Through engineering, we want to implement security strategies through CPTED, environmental design, so we can eliminate places, public rest waiting areas, maybe rest rooms, minimize concealed spaces, so that we can increase visibility. Right now, we have a lot of places down there where people can hide from security and hide from cameras and stuff like that. So we want to try to eliminate those and put everybody out in the public. So we won't put everybody and everything that's done out in the visible eye. We are currently installing cameras. We know the transit center has cameras, but like I said, because of some of the spaces, we have blind spots. So we want to install more cameras to eliminate those blind spots so we can have things on camera, everything captured on camera, so that if we have to go back and investigate something, we will actually have the footage and the data to help both contracted police and CMPD with that. There again, the fare zone, clearly marking it around the transit center so that customers know there's no question about if they stepped inside of the fare zone or not. The enforcement piece, we're strategically placing security personnel in optimal areas based on security site assessment. We conduct regular patrols to spot check both the public areas and the access controlled areas that's restricted strictly to and for our employees. We're conducting local emergency services for joint drills and rapid response capabilities with us, CMPD, and MEDIC. A mutual aid agreement. We have a mutual aid agreement request between our contract security, police, and CMPD. This would eliminate the boundaries of authority that we currently have between our contract security and police and CMPD. We want to enforce fare compliance to reduce unauthorized access and fare evasion, while also enforcing all local, state, and federal laws. Part 1 offenses, basically. We want to use CAT's exclusion policy for repeat offenders of fare evasion, repeat criminals, criminal activity, so that we can exclude people from the system for a period of 30 days, 6 months to a year, or depending on what the severity is, possibly indefinitely. We also want to we're going to use incident data to identify security trends so that we know how to better deploy our security personnel. So we're not just putting people in a place to where they're just standing and nothing's happening and they can't be seen. We want to optimize all our resources. So I know we're on a time crunch, so I was trying to get that in. Anybody have anything after that? Back to Kelly.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so in order to implement the items that Mr. Nesbitt talked about with the fare zone and with the renovations that we have planned, we needed to close the retail operations at the transit center. And so in May, notices went out to all of the tenants at the CTC of the planned work at the CTC and the need to relocate them. There are 6 current retail tenants, and as we mentioned, one had already notified us that they did not intend to renew, and the other 5 were notified that we intend to renovate the center, and that required them to move. The tenants are eligible for relocation assistance, and they were provided information about the relocation advisory services and eligibility for payment for moving and reestablishment expenses. So they'll work with the city's contracted relocation agent in developing their plans for relocation, and then they'll receive a notice of a move date, and they'll have time to move, which will be no less than 90 days at that point. And then finally on this point, we of course recognize that our employees in particular who take their breaks at the transit center, or their meal breaks, may need some additional options for lunch or meal breaks. And so we are exploring vending and canteen options. And so I don't have any detailed information to share on that yet, but as we look more into that, we can provide an update in that area. Next, just to give you, oh, sorry, I thought you were going to add something. I give an update on the facility assessment that has been conducted at the CTC. We of course knew that we needed to make improvements at the CTC for both employees and customers. But in addition to that, we are required by the Federal Transit Administration to conduct condition assessments on all of our facilities every 3 years. So this was part of that requirement as well. We hired a consultant team led by the architectural firm Gensler to complete this condition assessment. And it's a very detailed assessment of the interior of the entire site at the CTC, as well as the structure of the CTC. And so that's been underway for the past several months, and it's nearing completion. All of the interior and site assessment is complete, and we're just finalizing the structure and envelope assessment. And this just kind of gives an indication of how they rate the various systems and elements of the CTC from 1 to 5 and come up with an overall rating. And that helps us to prioritize our investments in the renovation of the CTC.
Yeah, Ms. Goforth,
Yes.
Alyssa Calderhead speaking. With that FTA guidebook table, was an average rating provided for the assessment as it stands?
So as I mentioned, we still have a couple of elements to be completed, and then we'll have an overall facility rating provided. Yes. But we already know, have identified there does need to be some significant improvements to bring the facility up to a state of good repair. It just varies by the different sub-elements of the facility. It's just, as I mentioned, we had the team investigating all of the different areas in terms of the customer waiting areas, as well as the employee areas across the facility. And this is just a high-level summary of some of the proposed interventions or renovations that we are going to be pursuing at the CTC. Site improvements, including crosswalk striping, the fare zone, improvements to accessibility and access at the facility. There's some drainage issues at the CTC that will be addressed in the short term. That's been a significant issue for some time. We'll also be upgrading the lighting at the CTC, and that's going to have both safety benefits as well as just benefits for our customers, employees in terms of the light and feel of the facility. We'll be making improvements to the building systems like HVAC system, as well as an interior refresh. So we've identified through interviews with our employees, as well as comments from riders, a need for example, for employees additional break room space, a need for renovating both employee and public restrooms. And so those will be some of the aspects addressed with the renovation. In terms of overall schedule or next steps, the first phase will focus on these safety improvements, and those are kind of listed on the right side of this slide. In Pavilion B, yes, ma'am.
Tanya Jameson. So since you're all going to turn it into a fair zone, the other fair zones don't have public restrooms, do they?
So public restrooms at the facility will be public restrooms available for our customers. Yes, and so there are public restrooms today, yes.
Yeah, I was just curious how you all actually, because usually that's when things go down, is in the public restrooms. So I was
Right.
just curious, what, from the safety standpoint,
Yes.
from the safety standpoint, since the other fair zones don't have public restrooms, why we would have them at this one, then, since it's going to be a fair zone only facility.
So,
Yeah, we do need to have restrooms for the facility. They will be, I suppose, public in the sense that they are open to the traveling or ticketed public,
right.
ticketed customers. Today, I would say they are public in the sense that it is, because it's not a fair zone, they're just truly, literally public restrooms. And I agree with you, they do present some challenges from a security standpoint, or other activity standpoint, not always necessarily security, but other activities being conducted.
So how will you all determine who's using the public restrooms that's actually ticketed? Like, you're going to have security guards out there then at that point?
it's the access to the restrooms are interior to the CTC.
Got it.
So when we have the fair zone, which will enclose the entire CTC, once you're in there, you're in the fair zone, whether you're in the restroom or any other part of the CTC.
Also, if any of the group would like, we'd be happy to offer a tour of the facilities. If you haven't been down to the CTC in a while, it's worth a trip, and we'd be happy to offer that. If anyone would like that, just let us know.
Cool.
Yes, sir.
Probably worth, excuse me. So we're shutting down the retail. Is it after this construction and revamp, are we going to be inviting retail back, or is this a permanent decision not to have the retail concept at the station?
At this time, we don't have plans to reinstate retail at the transit center, but we are really currently evaluating kind of the long-term future for the CTC. So as we develop those recommendations, we'll be evaluating kind of long-term whether there might be retail coming back. But as part of these short-term renovations, no.
Yep, if you'll please introduce yourself.
John Cock, Town of Davidson. This is not a Town of Davidson question, but as a former frequent user of that facility, I mean, that's sort of a retail dead zone in Uptown. And so having, at one time there was medical services, there's convenience store, there was restaurant. I totally understand the rub. Those are nice to have in that area. Is there a way that retail could be out facing to activate Brevard Street, Trade and Fourth, and so you don't have to enter the center to access, but that retail vibrancy is still there? And related to that, I mean, is there some revenue that y'all are foregoing? And I totally get sort of the give and take here. So
Right. I was going to mention in phase two of this is kind of the programming and design for phase two facility improvements. And part of that is evaluating space needs for transit use. And so, but as part of that, we'll be kind of reprogramming the transit center, and we will be evaluating along with identifying the needs for CATS and our employees and customers, what additional space there might be for some of that. And as we, talk about the long-term vision for the CTC. So no decisions. I think that's great input to receive from our standpoint, and we will take that as well as any other comments that we have from today and in the future. This will give you all regular updates as we progress on this work.
Yeah, Alyssa Calderhead, I've got a quick question. I was impressed with the TSP engagement that was done with the communities all around. You presented a pretty comprehensive data set at one point. What will the stakeholder engagement look like when you reach that design portion?
That's a very good question. We've not really kind of laid out a specific plan, but we have identified the need to, of course, get some input from our operators as well as our riders through this process. So we may use surveys to do that. We have irregular surveys with our riders as well as employees. We identified the potential to use some focus groups as well. So we'll, as we firm up those plans, we can provide that back to you in terms of how we'll be moving forward with that engagement process.
Veteran Bird, Town of Matthews. Just curious, Pavilion B, is there another pavilion that needs renovation?
Yes, there's Pavilion A. So there's the Pavilion B is next to the rail line, and Pavilion A is the where most of the retail operations and the interior waiting area is for customers, and then Pavilion C is kind of where the buses are. So there's a hut, I guess, in the Pavilion C. So yes, the condition assessment was on all of the areas, and we'll be working to prioritize all of the improvements throughout the facility.
So I'm confused here. I apologize. So Pavilion B is the focus of this proposed intervention.
So yes, let me just backtrack a second. So phase one of safety improvements are related to instituting the fare zone, and some of that requires some modifications in Pavilion B. And primarily, as Ms. Jamison mentioned, restrooms are a concern. So the restrooms in Pavilion B, which are currently public restrooms, will have doors added to the restrooms, and they will be employee only. And we'll have public restrooms available in Pavilion A. So that's one of the changes as part of this first phase to improve specific safety concerns.
I guess my question is, I am not able to distinguish what you're calling the pavilions.
Do we have a, let's see. Maybe the large picture. So in the far side, on the left side of the picture is Pavilion A. And then Pavilion B is next to the rail line.
Go to the title slide. It kind of
there's a better picture there.
Well, at least you can see one of them. So
yeah, there we go. So Pavilion B next to the rail line. This is the 4th Street side.
So Pavilion B is the smaller arch.
Yes. And then the complementary smaller arch on the other side is Pavilion A.
Okay.
Pavilion B is up against the blue line, Pavilion A is up against Brevard, and Pavilion C is the large barrel roof in the middle.
Okay.
And so I apologize.
Yeah, I should have had a site layout for you. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Okay, with that, we will open it up into our committee forum. We have a couple of topics tonight. The first being provided by Mr. Robert Hillman, speaking to the anti-displacement measures a little bit more in depth. And we'll also need to make time for the parking repair within Matthews provided by Ms. Bertrand-Bird. So I'll open it up to you, Mr. Robert.
I had questions, some of which were answered, and I think the principal takeaway from me is that there's nothing embedded in the sales, from the revenue from sales tax is assist with anti-displacement. They're kind of two separate things, right? This money is going to come in to fund the system. There's whatever the city can do and find funding for separately to ensure that people aren't displaced. And I guess also that there are business opportunities for area entrepreneurs who want to have a good or service that can provide.
So yes. Oh, I apologize. Brent Cagle. So yes. On anti-displacement, agreed. There are city programs, $100 million affordable housing bond, of which about 40%, $40 million is really dedicated to what I would refer to as staying in place or anti-displacement. And that's every 2 years. And the intention of the city is to continue that. And that's the focus. There's also equitable TOD, but again, the main focus is through the city's commitment to affordable housing, anti-displacement. On the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise or DBE program, again, there are federal requirements currently, for CATS and our contracting. So we have always followed that program. We will continue to follow that program. What I would say is beyond following the program, it's our commitment to see that program grow. And so we know there's a lot of conversation, and we've heard it of, how can we do better to create more opportunities in these future projects? And there's always sort of this push-pull of, why don't we just say this is what the goals will be today? We'll draw a line in the sand. And the answer is, under the federal guidelines, you can't just say the goal will be X. That's literally not allowable under the federal program. You have to do the analysis to understand availability and disparity in the market. But that's not to say that there isn't a lot of work to be done today. So if the goal is to create more opportunities, you don't say today 30% will be the goal. What you do is you say, we want to increase that and we aspire to 30%. And the way we do that today, 5 years from now, the first project, maybe not 5, but the first project construction won't start for several years. So what we do today, the city and CATS, is you create a program to, one, identify what those opportunities will be when we start to contract for them. 2, identify the gaps in businesses, right? Where are there gaps in ready, willing, available businesses to fill those contracts? And then 3, you start to build capacity through small business programs and through workforce development programs. And you do that today so that there are more businesses ready, willing, and available when the contracts go out for bid. And so that is, that's a long way, right? It would be easy just to say, we're gonna say 30%, that's the goal. But you start by building capacity, and the city also has a commitment to workforce development and small business development and building, as well as CATS. The other thing I'll point out when it comes to CATS, and it's perfect segue here, because I do like to talk about success stories. When we talk about safety and security, when we talk about opportunities for local small businesses, minority businesses, it's more than just construction contracts for rail. One of the things we're really proud of, December 14th was the day that PSS, Public Safety Solutions, Professional Security Services. I got none of those right, other than the P, the S, and the S. But I will get this part right. They took over the entire security contract for CATS, local-owned business, small business, minority-owned business. Lee Ratliff is the owner, former CMPD officer, understands Charlotte, understands transit, is a great partner. is committed to the community, that is helping him grow his business as well as serving us as a partnership. And there are many of those kinds of opportunities, not just with the big construction contracts, but also with the services we provide every single day in pursuit of the daily operations.
So just as a follow-on, so you're going to be sort of publicizing and surveying one of two things. One, publicizing what opportunities there will be in 3 years or 5, but also somehow surveying and understanding what the gaps are. And
the city has already started to work through how to contract for and conduct that, what I'm going to call gap analysis, so that we can develop strategies now for how to build capacity for those contracts when they're ready to come out.
Alyssa Calderhead, co-chair, and I just want to dial back into what we talked about tonight with the sales tax. There was a great slide with, I think it's what's being proposed. But it talked about how that translated to households, low income as well. And when we think about the cost of a vehicle and how that looks at like $12K a year versus I think it's $11 a month or $132 a year for a low income household. So thinking about the opportunities that would cascade from something like this put in place, and then so on and so forth with the 450K jobs, et cetera. And so, thinking about all of the different mechanisms at work and how we can close those gaps and make all of this dovetail appropriately together. So
I appreciate that. And it's also about evidence, like to the extent that you provide it and publicize it and push it out, right? People then know that this is what's happening versus the assumption is that nothing is happening and nothing is being done. And, people are going to vote for something that that they don't see the benefit.
Oh, yeah. And we'll hand it off to Ms. Veteran-Bird.
Nothing as big as displacement or security. There's a huge hole in the entrance of the Matthews Township Parkway, I think is the name of it, the bus station. I did submit a complaint to the CATS app. Someone came out very quickly and filled it with gravel. I just thank you very much. I just want to make sure that the long-term solution is in progress.
It is. I did not, but I know the guy who did. His name's Craig, and he did a great job. It is not the long-term solution. You are correct. That was the short-term solution to get that hole filled in temporarily. Craig will be engaging a paving contractor for the real fix, for the long-term fix.
Yes, Mr. Barry Green, go ahead.
Yeah, Barry Green Jr., Mecklenburg County. My only concern as I've read through and watched the presentation is this is a 30-year plan and the word children, family, or school hasn't been mentioned one time. And as a father of a 1 and 3-year-old, that's really concerning to me because it will affect them more than anybody else in this room. And it's an honor to be able to massage this plan out, but it's something that as I also look at this map where we have our biggest car lines near, south of Independence and east of South Boulevard, South Park, Park Road, they're not getting micro transit zones according to this map, and they're not getting rail. So they're stuck in their cars. And I didn't see anything that says that we're either addressing it or some of this funding would go towards it, and they're going to vote. And we don't have anything at the moment to address those concerns. And so I guess ultimately my question is where does that come into play?
Yeah, Brent Cagle. So a couple things. Better Bus is a large expenditure. We think about Better Bus as sort of a project, right? Just like the Silver Line or the Red Line or the Gold Line. Better Bus is a project in and of itself. The good thing about Better Bus is it is flexible and microtransit included in that. And so as we go through this, we have the opportunity to do a couple things. One is to engage with the community and say, here's what our proposal is. Have we missed something? In fact, we have examples of that with microtransit zones where folks have already started looking at this map and said, hey, I think you missed an area here. There's something important. We can redraw that, right? And so that gives us the opportunity to do that. Generally speaking, some of the areas that you see not covered are more about density of population in those areas, or about, are they large employment centers? Not that they couldn't benefit from microtransit, but also the acknowledgement that we don't have sufficient funds to make the entire county, as you know, cover the entire county. But we do have the flexibility to make those changes as we get input. So just like from North Lake up to Davidson, when we implemented that zone, we did extensive community outreach, and that informed ultimately what that zone looked like. And that will be true for all of the 19 zones. Yes, sir.
And just a note that the map that's included in this presentation is just the routes that are getting the 15-minute or better service. And so I just maybe reference the Better Best map that we had in our presentation for kind of the complete picture. So it could be, you know, there are routes there that are going to 20 minutes, so they're not shown on this map.
Yeah, so the top 15 routes go to 15 minutes, and that covers 60% of the bus ridership. But all routes are improved. So right now, any route that is outside of that top 15, 16 through about 65, I think we have about 65 routes. Those go from anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour where they are today, down to no greater than 30 minutes, so 30 minutes or less. So all routes are improved. The top 15 routes are improved to 15 minutes or better. And this only shows 15-minute frequency, not the full route map.
Alyssa Calderhead, co-chair. Mr. Ed McKinney is no longer here, but I listened to him speak this weekend at the Charlotte Sustainability Summit. And while the words, father, child, family weren't necessarily spoken, the word multi-generational came up a lot. So I'm with you in that we need to have more human-centered language in something like this, but I think it is very much top of mind for people recognizing that this is propelling us through multiple generations for Charlotte families.
To your point about schools and school children, and so an interesting thing that over the last year CATS has been working with CMS to identify schools that maybe we could partner with CMS on to assist them with their teachers, with their students, with their students' families, getting to and from school, and using CATS. And the interesting thing we found, interesting not in a good way, is when you start to narrow down the list of schools that are proximate to high frequency transit, it's shockingly short. I mean, it's less than 5. And that is a huge limiter, right? Because one of the things you need to utilize transit, especially with schools and the schedules, you need high frequency. And that list, I was surprised. It was a very short list. Now, the good news is by having a significantly expanded high frequency network, the possibility for partnerships with CMS also significantly expands as well. But we are open to those. Oh, Mr. Wells. So I get to say we're open to those partnerships. But right now, because our high frequency network is so small, it's a very small universe of schools that are proximate to that.
I think we have time for one more question here.
CAT staff for the microtransit service. The drivers have been awesome. Service has been super responsive.
Oh, apologies.
Jonathan
One more
Wells,
question.
CMS. Very, very quickly. Mr. Cagle talked about students and teachers. I would also encourage not excluding non-teaching employees such as custodian, because those are the folks who are in all likelihood in an economic strata that are probably going to be even more needy than the teachers to rely upon public transit.
Absolutely. You're correct, sir. It would not be limited. In fact, I would include students' families, any staff, anyone who's, working, any employees of the school, of the district. And actually, we find in microtransit, maybe it's a coincidence, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. In the microtransit zone, the first rider was a school teacher. The 5,000th rider was a school teacher. So we do see the need across, whether it's students, their families, all employees at CMS.
And if I could get it, can I sneak one?
Long as I don't miss my bus.
Quickly, when the projections are off, right, from our modeling, what actually gets cut? What's the prioritization? So we've got roads, better bus, and rail. Like, if we don't have enough money, what doesn't get funded?
So that is a great question. And it's one that we can't answer. We will need to, as I said, we will continue evaluating the plan. It's an iterative plan, right? It's a living plan. And should we hit a situation where costs are more than we anticipated, we'll develop a strategy at that time for those. But I couldn't say now what would be removed or it would depend on the circumstances. Now, the other side to that, the transit system plan also says if there is additional funding available, we will then pursue opportunities to continue extending the Silver Line beyond Bojangles.
Okay. With Alyssa Calderhead, co-chair, with no more business, it is 5:33 p.m. Can I please get a motion to adjourn? Who made the motion? Anthony Hansard, Town of Cornelius. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Please announce yourself and second.
Kevin Walsh.
All in favor? Are there any nays?
Can I provide two updates real quick?
And before I adjourn, I'm going to hand it off to Ms.
Yep, I
Rossetti
just
here.
wanted to provide two things. One is that we are going to have a fleet showcase where we'll have all of our new vehicles out on display in the circle on June 25th in advance of the MTC meeting. So if anybody happens to be uptown and would like to take a look at those, you are more than welcome, and we can send that out in an email. And then secondly is we are kind of revamping our van pool program, and that revamp will go live July 1st, and we'll have press out and about on that. And so just wanted you to be aware in case you saw that.
Fantastic. So with